This a major legal blow to Trump here. A grand jury in just the past few minutes, as we're coming to air, has refused to indict the New York Attorney General Letitia James. It's a big deal. This would have been the second indictment, right? Coming a week after a federal judge tossed the DOJ's mortgage fraud case against James and the Justice Department's case against former FBI Director James Comey. Now, this was all, of course, because of Lindsay Halligan, whether she had the right to be in the job. So the question is, were they going to go ahead and try James take two? They did. When her case was first tossed out, Attorney General Pam Bondi had vowed to take all available legal action, including this immediate appeal. And prosecutors can still bring another indictment against James, which, well, we'll see if that happens. She, of course, is one of Trump's top political targets.
The fascist and racist Attorney General of New York State, Letitia James.
You have an Attorney General who's a total stone cold crook, New York State, Letitia James, a total crook.
A crooked AG, Letitia James.
Letitia James from New York. This is another real Lola. There's no question about Letitia James, the corrupt Attorney General of New York.
Caitlin Polance is out front live in Washington with this breaking news. And Caitlin, this coming just a few moments ago. And Letitia James, the James Comey case is obviously a more challenging one for them, right? I mean, once Lindsay Halligan's tenure was ruled not okay, that one really goes away. But Letitia James could have had a second life or a third life. So what does tonight's decision mean by this grand jury?
It means that the Justice Department is in a fraught time for all of these cases they are trying to bring that Donald Trump so wants. The case against James Comey, the case against Letitia James, they both had been looked at previously by a judge. They had been approved by grand juries, and a judge had said, you know what, Lindsay Halligan is the U.S. attorney that Donald Trump has sent into Washington or into Alexandria, Virginia to lead these cases. She doesn't have that authority. So those cases were dismissed. This is take two to try and revive these cases. This one against Letitia James, the grand jury was assembled in a federal courthouse in Norfolk, Virginia today, and that grand jury looked at the possibility of mortgage fraud charges here. What we know from the previous version of this indictment is that Letitia James had made statements in a loan application about a second home in Norfolk, Virginia, to save a couple $1,000s essentially over the life of her mortgage. This was a case that we now know the Norfolk grand jury decided not to approve today. That is from sources speaking to both Caitlin Collins and I. Very unusual circumstance that doesn't normally happen, Aaron. But the Justice Department, they want to potentially try again. They are saying through some sources telling us the Justice Department may want to seek another indictment of Letitia James, and that there should not be premature celebration at this time. But all of this just goes into the moment that we're seeing here. Here's a statement encapsulating that from Letitia James's lawyer, Abby Lowell. He says that the grand jury's refusal to indict Attorney General James is a decisive rejection of a case that they believe should never have existed in the first place. This should be the end of the case if they continue undeterred by a court ruling and a grand jury's rejection of the charges. That would have been what happened today and what happened last week. It will be a shocking assault on the rule of law and a devastating blow to the integrity of our justice system. Of course, if James were to be charged again, she could always fight those charges in court and the whole way to trial. Aaron?
All right. Thank you very much, Caitlin. And Ryan Goodman, Jamal Simmons, S.E. Cupp join me now. Ryan, first of all, just the basic significance of this. It happened really quickly. Obviously, the original indictment ruled not okay because of Lindsay Halligan not actually being in the position of prosecutor. But the jury refusing to do this today, the grand jury. They had the time before. So what does it mean that it didn't clear the hurdle this time?
It's just an extraordinary moment in the sense that a grand jury not returning an indictment is on its own terms highly unusual.
Right.
We already knew from the first indictment that it was quite flimsy, to be frank. So the idea here is that it's that weak that a grand jury doesn't even return an indictment. Were the government to try again and get one, they go back to square one in a certain sense. Then they're walking with an indictment that can work in court. But if any other jurors in an actual case get wind of that one way or another, the whole idea around it, the public consciousness, is that this is a very weak case.
I mean, it's pretty incredible, right? Because the Lindsay Halligan situation, her appointment, she had to charge James Comey or a statute of limitations hit, right? So they can't, re-bringing that one obviously is basically impossible. But the Letitia James case, they could bring again, right? So they had this broader window to do this. But it sounds like what you're saying is that something gets so poisoned by a grand jury saying no, that really would lower the chances of any second try.
Lowers the chances, and one of her strongest defenses is that this is a vindictive prosecution. The fact that the grand jury did not return an indictment would strengthen it incredibly if they were to get a second indictment, because the argument behind vindictive prosecution, the paradigmatic case is when the government either brings a flimsy case, so the fact that it was already rejected by a grand jury, or tries to re-indict somebody a third time. Right. That would be the hallmarks of vindictive prosecution. I'm not saying she'd win that, but it really strengthens her ability to win that argument. Right,
well, especially because prosecutors are supposed to only bring cases they really feel confident they can win.
Yeah.
And grand jury, I guess stating the obvious here, this would show that would be much less likely. You know, Essie, this point about vindictive prosecution. I mean, Trump and Letitia James, there was a point where they were each other's main foil, okay? They don't like each other. But when it comes to Trump and selective prosecution, there's a lot to say. I mean, just let's listen to some of it.
The fascist and racist Attorney General of New York State, Letitia James.
You have an Attorney General who's a total stone cold crook, New York State, Letitia James, a total crook.
A crooked AG, Letitia James.
Letitia James from New York. This is another real Lola. There's no question about Letitia James, the corrupt Attorney General of New York.
All right, how significant is this blow to Trump? I mean, because you can't pull it out of, as Caitlin Pullins is talking about, the fraught environment at the DOJ, but the fraught environment in general after the elections in Virginia and New Jersey and after the Epstein vote and all of it, right?
I think this is both a story of incompetence and diminishing political capital. The incompetence in making a Lindsay Halligan, after several lawyers said, I'm not touching this, putting her in there, giving yourself really no good opportunity to win. That's to the incompetence side, and we're seeing that kind of throughout Trump world. But the diminishing political capital is really astounding. There was a time when Trump could get up and say things like that, and by sheer will of force, it would seem like all the apparatus around him would bend and do what he said. Now he's got prosecutors saying no. He's got people at the Pentagon saying, no, I won't do it, I'm resigning. He's got lawmakers saying, I'm resigning because I'm not going along with this. He's got people saying, I will not bury the Epstein files. I will not end the filibuster. Indiana state senators saying, I will not help you redistrict. The capital that this man once had, convincing Republicans to defend an insurrection at one point. Now he can't even give them, get them to do his basic bidding. The things he, did so powerfully in his first term. It's astonishing.
I mean, on the same day that you have a Republican, Thomas Massie, criticizing the Speaker of the House for being a rubber stamp for the president of their own party, right? Make it very clear that that's not a good thing.
Yeah.
You wouldn't have heard that was a bad thing a few months ago.
You would not. And just to paraphrase the president, these cases are garbage. I want them out of the justice system. I think they are wrecking the Justice Department. I think this is evidence that the system is developing the antibodies to this virus that Trump is putting into the American judicial system, that is using the political party that he controls to go out and target people individually. These are things that we've all tried to get away from ever since the Nixon era, that we said we're not going to do things like this anymore. Trump is trying to snatch us back, and we're all saying no. And you're even seeing it on the Hill, where Republicans in Congress are realizing that maybe their political future can't be saved by Donald Trump, because he will either attack them in the primary or ignore them in a general election and end their political career because he doesn't have the ability to save them anymore.
So then what is at stake in terms of their decision? I mean, can they quietly decide, Pam Bondi, you know what, let's let this go. Let's not try to bring another case against her because of what you're saying, what you're saying, the difficulty of, and the bruise that you would take if, again, a grand jury rejects it? Or do you have so much on the line that you gotta do it?
If they go a third time and they get rejected, I think it's incredibly embarrassing. And think about the morale within the Justice Department. It would be crushing. It's not so crushing. Maybe they can just walk away from this. It's just a terrible dumpster fire that happened and not try again. Even if any prosecutors ever tried a second indictment after being rejected by a grand jury, it would raise problems within the Justice Department. I think they might just want to walk away.
Oh, well, so that would be, it would just not, it's not a thing.
Cut your losses.
Okay, so then, Essie, does it spiral? I guess that's the real question. Does this continue to metastasize?
Yeah, in this current environment where we have new polling that shows many Americans believe the cost of living is as high as they have ever seen it right now. That was Trump's singular promise. In a landscape where the economy is not doing well, and even Trump voters are blaming him for it, all of this stuff matters a lot more than it would have normally. If the economy was great and singing, voters can compartmentalize. We've seen this over and over again. They've done that. They can compartmentalize the good and the bad. But in this environment with the tariffs and the DOJ cuts and the shutdown, people really hurting out there around the holidays, all of this stuff just looks much worse and much more chaotic and much more damning.
Been fighting so long and so hard that they don't know what the they're doing.